muscles, bones, blood, and more, each with their own rhythm against mom and baby's heart pulse. Every day and every night, all the time, until that moment arrives, when too big to fit inside this ancient dreamland anymore, and we are forced to leave it all behind and move into a dramatic change, has already lived an entire lifetime, like the 90-year-old who must finally As humans, we start our lives from the very first instant